What is going on, Guardians? Avatar here, and in today's video I want to show you a Prismatic Titan build that you can use. It's going to focus on survivability as well as damage and the ability to stun all types of champions. We all know by now how good the knockout concentration combo is. Being able to increase your melee damage, ignitions, and health regen is great. But what if I told you that there's another build that you can try? Of course, we're going to start the build off with Twilight Arsenal Super. It's a weakening effect, plus its recent buff makes it a perfect option. For our abilities, we're going to be using Thruster. It's a short cooldown paired with Dranger's Lash, gives it an almost constant time. And for the jump, you can really use whatever you like. I prefer Catapult Lift myself. And for melee, we're opting out to use Shield Throw. Why, you might ask? Well, we're a sucker for an overshield, and with each hit from the shield, you actually get granted some amount of overshield. And since we're going to be playing add dense activities, the shield's going to bounce off targets, so you can see where it's going. Next, for our grenade, we're going to be using Pulse Grenade for a few different reasons. Pairing the Pulse Grenade with Facet of Dominance allows it to jolt targets, which does two things. One, it helps it clear adds, but it also stuns overload champions. For our aspect, we're going to be using Unbreakable, another tool that you can use to survive in a pinch. Being able to hold your grenade button down and create a void shield that blocks partial damage gives you a passive overshield, but also detonates when you either release the grenade or you run out. Creates a pretty decent sized explosion, damaging nearby enemies, which is fantastic when you got nothing else to do. For our second aspect, we're using Dranger's Lash to create a ball of strand matter, which we can get when we use our Thruster ability. Not only does it damage nearby targets, but it also suspends them, which can help with unstoppable champions, and it's going to create a tangle when you defeat an affected enemy. For our Facets, we're using the Facet of Purpose to gain an overshield when we pick up an Orb of Power, the Facet of Protection, which actually gives us a 15% damage reduction when we're surrounded, and a 32% damage reduction when we're surrounded in Transcendence. Then, Facet of Dominance, which gives our arc grenades the ability to jolt targets, followed by the Facet of Solitude, which actually severs targets, decreasing incoming damage in PvE by 40%, and targets affected by sever create a tangle. Facet of Balance to get our melee from rapid defeats with light damage. Grenade energy gets restored from rapid defeats with darkness damage. And since we're using Dranger's Lash, we actually get a final fragment in the last slot that we can actually use, so we're going with Facet of Courage to increase light ability damage to targets that have a darkness debuff applied. In this case, it's going to be the Sever. Which brings us to our pulse rifle of choice. Aisha's care can not only sever targets, but it also stuns anti-barrier champions with the artifact perk. The pulse rifle comes from Trials, which if you don't want to jump into PvP, I'd recommend going to the Prophecy Dungeon and getting a Strand Relentless Pulse. It will basically serve as the same purpose, and it's a PvE activity which is currently farmable. And our exotic of choice is going to be Buried Bloodline. But before you turn off the video, just because you haven't gotten it yet, don't worry. I've created an entire Discord community that will help you farm it if you haven't gotten the sidearm, including myself. So the exotic special sidearm from Warlord's Ruin grants Devour on multi-kills, which can get extended from kills with any other source. Also, if you do have the Catalyst, it actually weakens targets, but in the meantime, you can always use the Call sidearm as well as Graviton Lance if you don't have it or you want to do a different build that has the same effect. Both are going to synergize extremely well with the build. For our heavy of choice, we're going to use Apex Predator, Reconstruction, and Bait and Switch. I totally understand if you don't have it from Last Wish. Again, not a problem. You can always use the new Strand rocket launcher that comes from Solstice, the Crowning Dulag. It actually has the exact same roll, or you could do the Cold Comfort from Ghost of the Deep, which can roll Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. Or if you don't have any of those, there's always the World Drop Crux Termination, which you can get with Explosive Light, which is also going to be super great. Next, our exotic armor piece. We have a class item on right now, but you don't actually need one. The Precious Scars exotic helmet will do the job exactly like the class item I'm using, so don't think you need to go farm for a specific class item. Our class item has the Spirit of Assassin, which is going to grant invisibility on finishers and powered melee final blows, as well as the most important part of it, Spirit of Scars, which gives you health regen on weapon final blows that match your super. So not only do we get Devoured from Buried Bloodline, we get an overshield when we pick up an Orb of Power, but we also get health back with every single void kill, plus it'll grant you and nearby allies with restoration. Finally, we have our mods. For armor mods, I always like to use heavy ammo finder and scout for those heavy ammo drops, as well as a siphon that matches our weapon to create orbs. So constantly creating orbs, getting back heavy ammo for us and our teammates, and Of course, on the arms, we're going to use a melee kickstart to get melee energy back after we throw our shield. Fastball for the grenade because, frankly, I hate throwing grenades slow and not that far. And then momentum transfer, which gives us melee energy on grenade damage. For the chest piece, it's always good to have resistance mods that actually match the activity that you're doing, so be sure to check out the activity as well. That way you can kind of see what you need to have those mods for. I always like using charged up as well to increase our armor charges, or you could use reserve mods that actually match your heavy weapon. That way you get a couple more shots in your rocket or GL. For our legs, we have to go with surge mods that match our heavy or our DPS weapon of choice, just to help increase the damage. I also like to use recuperation or better already to get health back on an orb pickup. With this build, you should be creating a ton of orbs, so get invisibility off melee kills, get orbs and devour off your buried bloodline, pick up orbs, regain more health, and see tons and tons of survivability with this build. That's what it's entirely about. Now, the class item for the mods, I like to use time dilation for longer durations of my armor charges, bomber for grenade cooldown, and then outreach for our melee cooldown. And then there's a couple key artifact mods that you're going to want to use. Anti-barrier pulse, of course, to stun those champions. Threaded blast, though, is one of my favorites because when you kill a strand debuff target, it creates that tangle. And when you shoot it with a strand weapon, this being our pulse rifle, it's going to create a blast much bigger than it normally would. And then, of course, radiant orbs to get a radiant buff on orb pickup, which helps do more damage. And then galvanic armor to become amplified when you pick up an orb of power, which again helps with damage reduction. And of course, we do like using Shield Crush as well, which helps recharge our melee when you get an overshield, and your grenade energy when you have radiant or amplified. So tons and tons of synergy going into that build right there. But of course, we want to do as much damage as possible. But at the same time, we want to survive, because doing in-game content doesn't matter how much damage you can do if you can't stay alive. So there you have it, Prismatic Titan build that synergizes extremely well, provides great survivability, and doesn't need to use knockout or consecration. If you enjoyed the video or if you found it useful, a like would be very much appreciated. And if you're looking for a Sherpa, folks to play with, we do have a wonderful Discord and the link's down below. We'd happy to have you join, help you do some content you haven't done before, or just join you in your next run. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.